Barcelona's struggling right now, 7th in La Liga. We know the situation with Manchester United as well, because this is the 5th manager they've employed since Sir Alex Ferguson left the club, that they are trying to get back to where they were. So I guess the big question is, when you look at these footballing empires, and I think it's fair to say they are footballing empires.
Yeah, they're iconic clubs, aren't they? Yeah.
Which do you think, when you're looking at them right now, has had the biggest decline?
If you're talking in footballing terms, then Manchester United. If you're talking in financial terms, then clearly Barcelona. Because Manchester United, since the departure of Alex Ferguson, have won very little of meaning. They've won the Europa League and they've won the League Cup and they've won the right to compete in Europe for the last 7, 8, 9 years. But they haven't been the Manchester United that were there when Ferguson was there and Martin Edwards and David Gill and whoever else. Barcelona have continued to win things in the last decade, but their financial decline has been compounded specifically and explicitly in the last year by a change of policy that La Liga have adopted, which is they're going to control the spend of these clubs. Primarily because they want to push back on the Middle Eastern investment and try and get some governance into sport, because the Qataris and the UAE guys are pouring money into football, that even the Barcelonas of the world, with all of their economic might previously, because it was 18 months ago, 2 years ago, before COVID, that Barcelona were about to announce that they were the first billion euro turnover based club. And when you've taken out 250 million a year in revenue because you've had COVID lock that football club down, and the socios that contribute the membership values and money to Barcelona, you've taken away the economic power that they have. Then you've taken away their ability to compete by La Liga saying, right, we are now saying that you have to meet financial governance and you have to have a salary to turnover ratio of a certain level, which I think is 70%. And also, any debt that you have has to be factored in as a coefficient to be able to release them, to reduce the amount of wages that you have. So Barcelona have gone from having a wage bill of 600 million, which is obscene, by the way, for the playing squad, down to 84 million to meet the obligations that they have. Now, you look at Manchester United and say they've had none of that, right? They've had a period of continued ascendancy from whether they got TeamViewer on the front of their shirt paying 250 million quid, or whether it was Chrysler or whoever it was, and every other commercial property has continued to power United to certain levels, but their on the pitch stuff has been significantly in decline, to such a point that we are where we are, whether you've allowed a very, very mediocre manager to preside over a club for 3 years, because what you were trying to do was get rid of the spirit of a dark force in Mourinho that caused the malaise that the guy fixed in 3 months, and now we gave that as a narrative that somehow that was going to build a football club for the next 2.5 years. So it depends what prism you're putting it through, Nat. If we put finances out of football, which you can't, but from footballing points of view, you can.
What would you say is more important?
Well, unfortunately, they're inextricably indexed, aren't they? Because without the finances, you can't have the players.
Yeah.
And without the players, you can't have the outcomes. Man United have had both the finances and the players and no outcomes. So you have to turn around and say that Man United as a footballing proposition are in decline much greater than Barcelona, because Barcelona can flick the switch back if the Liga changes. If the Premier League turned around and said to Manchester United and the teams in the Premier League, you have to work to the same coefficients and the same financial landscape as the Spanish, United would be in banging trouble, because United are geared with debt. Barcelona are geared with debt, and debt isn't a problem. We all have debt on our houses, but we still own houses and we pay mortgages. That debt is only a problem if you can't afford it. Barcelona can't afford it because they've had this unprecedented wipeout of their finances, because they're probably, arguably, the most cash generative business from their fans than any other business in football. At one point, Arsenal,
nice new club.
Arsenal were generating the most revenue from gate receipts 5, 6, 7 years ago, about 120, 130 million quid a year, and that was because their pricing policy was so off the scale in terms of what people pay to go and watch football in other clubs. But you now look at Barcelona and say, if United had to play on the same playing field as Barcelona, which is factor in the £500 million worth of debt that the Glazers saddled United with to buy the football club in the first place, alongside reducing some of the other things around it, they'd probably be more in trouble than some of the other top 6 sides in this country. But on a purely footballing landscape, it has to be Manchester United. because Barcelona have won things over this decade. If you compartmentalise that into the last year, then you're going to say, oh, all day it's Barcelona, because they're a mess. They're getting spanked in the Champions League. They're getting their heads handed into them in La Liga. They're losing their best players. They've had their president in clink for corruption, or held overnight with allegations of all kinds of impropriety. So you look at that football club and say, wow. But it will right itself.
But will it? With the financial restraints that you mentioned with the salary cap, how hard will it be for them to get back?
Well, it depends how they restructure. They're going to restructure their debt. I mean, Jim made lots of points over the last 6 months about Barcelona being in financial meltdown, and it was in some form of economic strife because the £1 billion or €1 billion that it owed were being called. But like in lots of situations, when you're talking about big finance, it's just a case of refinancing it and getting yourself a better model and a better deal and raising bonds and whatever else you do to refinance the football club. And I also think that Liga are probably going to soften a little bit because there's no benefit for their broadcast deals and for the proposition, which is La Liga, which Javier Tebas that heads up is constantly trying to push. He's trying to derail the Premier League, trying to derail the Italian leagues and their attitude and railing against the ESL. If he makes the two iconic sides in that league really financially impacted against the Premier League powerhouse that exists. So I do think Barcelona have been through periods in the past where they've gone through economic and football decline in the mid-80s. They've come back round as a powerhouse and they'll do it again.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning 10 till 1 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.